Welcome to this series on St. Francis de Sales' Treatise on the Love of God. In this series, we will explore the 12 books of this profound spiritual classic. And today, we will begin with Book 1, a preparation for the whole treatise. This first book sets the foundation for the entire treatise, outlining the structure of the human soul, the power of the will, and how love governs all aspects of our spiritual life. St. Francis de Sales emphasizes the importance of the will in directing our lives toward God and explains how divine love transforms everything. Let's dive into the key ideas of Book 1, which will prepare us for the deeper explorations in the following books. The role of the will in human life. In chapter 1, St. Francis begins by explaining that God has given the human will the power to direct all the faculties of the soul. The will is like a monarch that governs the various powers within us, from our bodily movements to our intellect and emotions. Just as order and harmony make music beautiful, when the will properly governs the soul, it brings about spiritual beauty and harmony. St. Francis de Sales draws a clear distinction between beauty and goodness. He explains that goodness is what the will desires, but beauty delights the intellect. For example, the beauty we observe in nature or art is a reflection of the greater spiritual beauty God desires for our souls. This analogy of beauty and harmony is critical to understanding St. Francis de Sales' broader view of spiritual life. He teaches that when the will aligns with God, it creates a unity in our spiritual life. But for this to happen, the will must take charge and guide the soul's faculties in a harmonious direction. The will's control over the faculties. In chapter 2, St. Francis elaborates on how the will governs the soul's faculties. But he points out that its control varies depending on which faculty is involved. The will has absolute control over the body's external actions, like moving our hands or speaking. However, its control over the faculties, like the senses and emotions, is less direct. For instance, we cannot simply command ourselves not to feel hunger or fatigue. The will must exercise more subtle influence, sometimes using reason and discipline to guide the lower faculties in the right direction. St. Francis de Sales compares the will to a father who governs his household. He commands his children directly, while his animals must be controlled with skill. The same is true with the will. Some faculties, like our external actions, obey immediately, while others, such as our appetites and emotions, require more careful management. The will must exert its influence patiently and consistently to bring these unruly faculties into order. The struggle with the sense appetites. The next part of the book 1 addresses the challenge of regulating the sense appetites, which include desires and emotions that are rooted in the body. In chapter 3, St. Francis explains that the will struggles to control these passions, and often it must fight against them to remain aligned with God's will. This is where the Christian concept of spiritual warfare comes into play. The will is continually battling the sense appetites, which try to lead us away from virtue and towards sin. These appetites are not evil in themselves, but when they are not properly controlled, they can lead to sinful behaviors. However, St. Francis de Sales reassures us that the will is powerful enough to resist these temptations. Even when our passions and desires rise up, the will can refuse to give it its consent, and in doing so, prevent sin. This is a hopeful message for anyone struggling with temptation. No matter how strong our desires may be, the will has the power to reject them and choose what is good. The primacy of love in the soul. Chapter 4 is where St. Francis introduces the central theme of the entire treatise, love. He explains that love is the most powerful of all the emotions, and it even governs the will itself. All other emotions, such as desire, hope, fear, and joy, flow from love. If our love is directed toward God, then these emotions will be good and virtuous. But if our love is misplaced, directed toward selfish or worldly things, then our emotions will lead us astray. St. Francis de Sales emphasizes that the will is free to choose which love to follow. It can choose divine love, which leads to union with God, or it can choose lesser loves that ultimately lead us away from God. This is a key point. While love governs the will still retains the freedom to choose its object. This interplay between love and the will is essential to our spiritual life. The will must choose divine love as its master, and once it does, love will lead the soul to greater holiness. The power of the will to govern emotions. In chapter 5, St. Francis delves deeper into how the will governs not just the sense appetites, but also the emotions of the rational soul. These emotions are more noble and spiritual than the bodily passions, and they include desires for truth, goodness, and virtue. The will must exercise careful control over these emotions, guiding them toward their proper end, which is union with God. St. Francis de Sales teaches that the will can reject sinful emotions and passions, and by doing so, it can gradually weaken their power. Over time, the will can bring these rebellious passions into submission, leading to greater inner peace and spiritual growth. This is a process of spiritual refinement that takes patience and persistence, but it is essential for anyone seeking a deeper relationship with God. Divine love as the supreme love. In chapters 6 and 7, St. Francis explains that divine love must rule over all other loves in the soul. He uses the example of Isaac and Ishmael, where Isaac, the child of promise, inherits over Ishmael, the child of the flesh. In the same way, divine love, which is born of grace, must inherit the highest place in our souls. It cannot coexist with other loves unless it reigns supreme. This means that divine love must guide every other affection and desire in the soul. All our loves, whether for family, friends, or even our work, must be subordinated to our love for God. Only then can the soul achieve true unity and harmony. The spiritual union sought by love. Finally, in chapters 9 and 10, St. Francis de Sales focuses on the ultimate goal of love, union with God. He explains that love, by its very nature, seeks union with the beloved. Just as human lovers desire to be united in heart and soul, the soul that loves God desires to be united with Him. But this union is not physical. It is a spiritual union that takes place in the will and intellect. When the will is perfectly aligned with God's will, the soul experiences this profound union, which is the ultimate fulfillment of love. This is the ultimate goal of the spiritual life, to be united with God through love. Everything else in the spiritual journey, the control of the passions, the governance of the will, the practice of virtue, serves this end. Love leads the soul to its highest fulfillment in union with God. Conclusion. Book 1 of Treatise on the Love of God sets the stage for the rest of the work by explaining the central role of the will and the supremacy of love. It shows us how divine love guides the soul, unites it with God, and governs all our actions and emotions. In the coming videos, we will explore how St. Francis de Sales develops these ideas further in the remaining books. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you continue with us on this journey through one of the most beautiful works of Christian spirituality. God bless you. Live Jesus.
You gave the will its might to guide our soul with purest light. In harmony the heart will sing when all its powers to you we bring. Through beauty's path we walk with grace, seeking your love in every place. Love leads the soul to heights above, to find its peace in God's great love. Through every trial, through every storm, it is your will that keeps us born. Oh, divine love, reign in our heart. In you alone we find our heart. The will commands, yet struggles still, to tame the heart, to curb its will. The senses often rise and fight, but love of God brings forth the light. With strength of will we turn away from sinful paths that lead astray. Love leads the soul to heights above, to find its peace in God's great love. Through every trial, through every storm, it is your will that keeps us warm. Oh, divine love, reign in our heart. In you alone we find our heart. Our passions rise, yet love will reign. For God's own love will break the chain. It rules the heart, it guides the mind to seek the good, the truth we find. Through love we give, through love we live, and to our God all praise we give. Oh, holy love, unite our soul, make us complete, make us whole. In union sweet, we seek your face in every moment, in every place. Through you alone, our hearts are one, with Christ the Lord, God's only Son. Love leads the soul